What is overlearning?
Overlearning is additional rehearsal of verbal information. This increases retention, especially with distributed practice, which I will talk about later. This applies to studying by rereading a text or making flashcards. Rereading a passage or terms multiple times can help reinforce encoding into working and long-term memory. For example, a student can create flashcards to remember APUSH terms.
Mnemonic study aids. Mnemonics are memory aids and techniques that use vivid imagery and organizational devices. Mental images and pictures are examples, as well as acronyms. HOMES for Great Lakes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. HOMES can help one remember all the Great Lakes. This relates to studying, as one can create a rhyme in their head and can apply it to material being studied. One example of this is Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. This is easy to remember as the words rhyme with one another, creating a clear picture in one's head.
The spacing effect is the phenomenon where learning is greater when studying is spread out over time, as opposed to studying the same amount of content in a single session. It is better to distribute practice so it can be easily encoded. This applies to studying, for example, by reading a long passage throughout the week instead of cramming it all in the night before it is due. Therefore, he or she can remember the information better when it is needed.
Deep processing. This learning technique uses semantic processing, which is how words work together to create meaning, which creates a much stronger memory trace in a student's mind. This term applies to studying because if a student were to deeply process a material item, then they would definitely have a better chance at recalling that item than a student who used shallow processing or cramming to study for an exam.
The testing effect is used when one wants to increase their long-term memory through testing and quizzes. Not only does the testing effect help with retrieval, it also improves our learning and memory system. This applies to studying because it helps the individual rehearse specific information. For example, a student can create a Quizlet Q&A set to test themselves with, or ask a teacher to create a short quiz based on the topic.
Chunking. Chunking is organizing information into familiar, manageable units. It enables us to recall more information more easily than if the information were to be separated. This applies to studying in that it allows for an easy recall on information. The terms are grouped together so that a student can remember them more efficiently on an exam or a test. An example is grouping up animals into their specific kingdoms. Mammals, for example, cats and dogs. Birds, and amphibians, like snakes and frogs.
The self-reference effect is a tendency for people to encode information better based on how they process the information. In other words, we tend to remember personal, relevant things more. We know more and understand ourselves the best. It's related to linking personal connections to the term. This applies to studying by making the individual think more about the term and add some sort of personal meaning towards it. For example, if the term is dog, you can remember your own dog at home.
Hierarchies. Hierarchies is the forming of information into groups based on levels of choice. One student may rate terms and group them based on levels of importance. Another student may choose levels of appliance. There are many different types of examples to group information into, and every student is different. This applies to learning in that it allows for terms to be placed in a sequence. As mentioned before in chunking, when terms are grouped together, they are more easily remembered. An example is how the animals can be grouped into their kingdoms. They can then be divided up by species, such as certain breeds of dogs, like golden retrievers, pit bulls, or poodles.